Hey everyone, this is the Tennis Industry Podcast with Tim Bainton and Tyler Stroyek. How you doing, Tim?
Good. How's it going?
Good. So I think we should start off with telling everyone our background. So why don't you start?
Thanks, Tyler. I'm excited to do this podcast with you, my friend. Hopefully it gives a little bit of a fresh perspective on the tennis industry. My name's Tim Bainton, originally from just outside of London. Tennis been my whole life. Grew up playing from the age of 6. All through the junior ranks. Played collegiately here in the United States, and then when I graduated, really wanted to stay in the tennis world, and was fortunate enough to have some opportunities to start coaching and so on and so forth. And then in 2008, created an entity called Blue Chip Sports Management, and we're very fortunate in that we've grown to be one of the sort of the best operators of tennis and health clubs in North America. I'm very proud of that. We've got a great staff, and so that's been the core business. So I've been in tennis. There's been some diversifications, like I said, into the bigger health club industry and things like that, but tennis is obviously my passion. It's been my life, and Blue Chip is still roaring today. And if you actually see here, I just the other day accepted the head men and women's tennis coach position at Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia. So it's week 1 on the job there. It's the new teams, kind of exciting actually, just to segue, but there's been over 100 tennis programs cut during the pandemic, for budget reasons. So kudos to Marymount for actually adding the men and women's tennis and putting some trust in me to hopefully bring a great program here. So and there's a few other things we're sort of looking to do as well. With regards to camps, maybe a professional tennis management program here, and then also potentially a new facility as well. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. So all in and around the tennis world. I've also co-authored 3 books, 2 specifically about tennis, and then one which was more in the health club operating side. I'm very passionate about education in this industry. Devoted a lot of time. Had over 100 periodical articles published in industry magazines, and prior to the pandemic was pretty common to be sort of a speaker at events, not just in North America, but actually even around the world. So very fortunate about that. And like I said, at the core, it's all just a love for tennis and being in the industry and around other like-minded people like yourself who can motivate us and make us better.
So I started my tennis business. I'm the owner of TenniswithTyler. I started out in 2017 with basically a box of cardboard balls. I sold my lessons at around $20, $25 an hour just to get some money to take my girlfriend out to dinner, a nice dinner. So I started my tennis business that way, and I just graduated college in May, and within 7 months I grew it to over 250 clients in the Philadelphia area, and I also made a huge social media following. I have almost 14,000 followers right now on Instagram, and I get a lot of my clientele through Instagram.
To let everyone know who's listening sort of how our relationship came about, I think it was maybe your freshman year of college, about 3-4 years ago now. I started seeing someone, yourself, putting stuff out there on Facebook and pushing some feathers a little bit, ruffling some feathers a little bit, kind of like I like to do as well. And it just resonated. And then I think we started to, connect more and, had a pretty good working relationship. I've just been very impressed, with what I've seen in how in that short period of time, which I know you'll talk about more, but how utilizing social media. And, I'm a big believer in not doing things the way they've always been done. And I think that's an issue our industry has had. So again, when I see someone that's, young and doing exciting things in the tennis world and seems to be doing it well and getting good, being well received as well, those are things that I just, I like and I want to be a part of, whether it's like, as we know, whether we're working together or whether we're doing a podcast together or whether it's just someone that I can just call a buddy in the industry that I can also learn from. Yeah. And I think an important thing, which has always resonated with me, and again, I don't know that it does as much as it should do in the industry, is that, but I mean, I'm still considered young in this industry at 38, which is ridiculous when you think about it, right? But, as we the next generation you're it right now. And I think that, I think it's smart of me. I don't think I know it all. And I've so many things that change and trends and different things that, I want to know your perception. I want to know what you're doing right now in the industry. Like, how are you doing it? What things are you finding accessible, easy? Where are the challenges? Things like that. Because at the end of the day, it's a big collaboration, right? And we want to see, tennis again. Number one safest sport. It's scientifically proven to add 10 years to your life. New York Times article back in 2019. It's the only major sport with female and male parity, both at the professional level and also with participation. So again, I think we're in a great position where we work in the best industry in the world, and it needs talented young people to keep pushing everybody forward. So kudos.
Totally. Yeah, and I feel like the whole tennis industry since the pandemic, it's changing. You have so many coaches going out on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, just trying to find different ways to connect with just the whole tennis world. And I feel like 3 or 4 years ago, it was a total different ball game. Like now, you could not convince me last year at this time that you could sell video lessons online to people all over the world, that people will go to their living rooms, to their basements, and swing a tennis racket and pay a lesson fee to work with you via video. And now it's a standard. People are doing video lessons all the time, and I just think that's a perfect example that the industry is changing. There's so many different things.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, again, I definitely was not an early adopter of this. I was, I couldn't quite get my head around how, you could be, like you said, swinging a racket in a living room and actually getting better at tennis.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because one thing I look to do a lot is look to other sports, other industries, and kind of garner knowledge and bring it back to what's relevant for us at Blue Chip and in the tennis world. And, golf basically really did an amazing job with this. You had an industry that statistically, the number one sports facility that opens annually is a golf course in North America, but it's also the highest rate of closure as well. And when you think about golf, and I love golf, I admit it, but you think usually it's considered similar to some things in tennis. Elitist sport, takes too long to play. You got to be really rich. And then what did they do? They embraced technology, right? I mean, so now you have Drive Shack, you've got Top Golf. We've been putting simulators into our clubs to utilize racquetball spaces, because obviously that's a dying sport. Sorry to any racquetball fans out there. But my point is that tennis has to adapt as well with this. And you're seeing right now, number one, in fact, I'm an owner in, is AccuTennis, which is, again, a game-based interactive system that obviously is for the higher level players, but also it gives another spectacle, if you will, to playing on a court. And there's obviously pickleball and pop tennis and padel and all of these. So variations like that, even though I don't think they're ever going to, because again, it depends who you speak to. Like, I think that they are complements to the game of tennis and to the industry as a whole. But just like golf, you're going to start seeing this. Like, there's other technologies out there right now that, where you're going to be able to have a tennis experience, but in a smaller space. Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge. Is the size of a tennis court is very large. And when you only, for example, if you look at it as a business, like in our area here in the DC area, we recently sold a club. Not because it was failing, the club was very successful, but the cost of indoor real estate that's that big, there's so many other things that can be utilized in that space just from a profitability standpoint. So we sold this club to Fairfax County because it's going to become low-income housing. And we've seen this trend. Anywhere, I know I'm very familiar with a lot of the indoor clubs around the Philadelphia area, New York, Boston, DC, Baltimore, places like this. There has been a shrinkage of indoor courts. And Now, sort of to segue off that, though, if you look at COVID right now, we have some snow on the ground just now, but literally 2 weeks ago, we were still programming outside because tennis has also become more popular because of COVID, right? Because it's the safest sport to play. And then the other thing that's happened out of COVID is people obviously are less willing to go into an indoor space. So they're looking to hang on and play more, year round outside. Now, in our area, there's no shortage of outdoor courts. They're everywhere. But on the indoor piece, that's a bit of a challenge. And, something that I'm sure we'll talk about in further episodes, because one of the things that, we know how to, on our side, we know how to run very successful tennis and health clubs. But the economics of it become very challenging because of the size of an indoor court. And I mean, if you've got 6, 8 of them, I mean, it's a substantial piece of real estate.
Yeah, and I mean, even up in Philadelphia, I haven't stopped teaching really until the snow hit. The only thing that's been stopping people from going out on the court all the time is the snow itself. Mm-hmm. People, I feel like COVID is starting to tell people that, oh, you can go out as long as there's sun out. People are playing all the time outdoors, and I feel like it's a huge change in the tennis industry because people who wouldn't even think of going outside to play tennis are now doing that instead of going to an indoor club. So I agree with you, and I think that trend's going to continue, honestly.
Well, one thing as well that we've started to experiment with is because of this, is because within our portfolio we have a substantial amount of outdoor courts, and what we started to play around with is actually just using commercial heaters in the 4 corners of the courts so that people can actually play out there longer and more comfortably. Now, again, obviously, if it's raining or snowing or gale force winds, that's not. But if you're dealing just with the cold, right, which again we'll have a little bit of snow here for a few weeks of the year, but the rest of the time is then just the seasons changing and when it gets cold. So if we're able to sort of somehow be creative like that, and it's nothing new. I mean, you think about it, like I was at the golf club I'm a member at, when you finish, if it's the winter, the guys in the caddy shack have a fire going. So, you golfers come over and you warm your hands up and all this stuff. Yeah. It's just, again, what I'm seeing is that there's an opportunity where there's a lot more people that want to play tennis, right? And unfortunately, it is remarkable that a pandemic is actually probably the greatest thing to happen to the tennis industry ever.
Seriously.
With all the horrible stuff that has come with it, friends and families and anyone that's had to deal with COVID, and then just the job market, the isolation, all of these. I mean, it's a horrendous thing that everyone's been through. Yeah. One bright spark out of this is that tennis is booming, and more people have come to tennis. And what I noticed for the first time, like ever, I live near a Dick's Sporting Goods, and I went in there, a few times back, like sort of around everywhere from like, I don't know, March, June, July. There were no tennis balls, there were no tennis rackets. And the reason why that's really important is because, if you're an avid tennis player, you're not going to Dick's Sporting Goods to buy your rackets and your balls. Yeah. Right? You go to Tennis Warehouse or to your pro shop or directly to the manufacturer. What was fascinating is that all of that tennis equipment that's in there is affordable, and therefore it just proves that it was new people that were trying the game because it was accessible during this pandemic. Now, the bit that we have to, as an industry, latch onto is we've suddenly had all these players come out the woodwork or want to do more, or first timers. Now, as we move through the pandemic, are we as an industry set up well enough, professionally enough, are our coaches cutting edge enough in order to keep this audience? And in fact, even to kind of pour gasoline on it and try and get more and more and more from it. Because that's what happened in the tennis industry. The last 15, 20 years, you've seen a decline, and it's because people have gone to other sports. Even video games is something that's taken rackets out of people's hands. So I think it's exciting. I think it's a little bit lucky. I'll be curious to see with this growth if some of the powers that be actually acknowledge that this is a fluke, and no offense, nothing that they've done to help reposition the industry.
Yeah.
But you see it, and then I see on social media, like you were mentioning, especially when the first shutdown happened. I mean, and I'll ask you a question about this in a second. Everyone and their mother suddenly wanted to charge for online lessons, coaching, consulting, peer-to-peer stuff, whatever. And as we've gone back to a little bit more normalcy, you've seen some of that stuff fizzle out. But like you said, there's also some people that are doing it very well and very successful. So my question to you is, when you see, or you saw, and you still see, all of these other people doing stuff sort of similar to or trying to do stuff similar to what you're doing with Tennis with Tyler, what do you think sets someone apart? Like, because there does seem to be a lot of it,
Yeah, I just think it's being real. You have so many, again, like you said, everyone jumped to that ship. I honestly was thinking about making a meme for my social media page about, pandemic just hit, and it's just like you swinging a tennis racket on a couch, and then you swinging a tennis racket in your bedroom and like random places, because every single coach was doing it. So when I first started my social media thing, I actually paid this guy for a stroke analysis course. And what he did is he charged a fee, and you took his course and you learned how to analyze strokes online and create a business. And I took it. And there were about 40 to 60 coaches on there. And every single coach, they all started out with their following. And I had 300 followers at the time. Other coaches maybe had 1,000. But now I'm way bigger than half of them are. And there's a couple that really stood out. And again, they were just being real. They were being who they are. There's so many coaches that go out there. And I think we spoke about this before, is that everyone can teach a forehand. If you go on YouTube, there's a million videos on how to hit a forehand. But it's just how you look, how you act, how you do it. And that's the thing. You have to have your own brand and just be genuine about it. And like we said, too, some of the big players in this industry, they're starting to come out with these different courses for how to grow your social media and things like that. But when I see it, it just blows my mind, because then when you go and check their social media, there's nothing there. So, I mean, I personally would never pay or spend time looking at some how to grow your social media if you don't have a social media. It just doesn't make sense with me. So if I could recommend anything to anybody watching this, if you're looking to start growing, and you could be a tennis club, you can be a tennis coach, you could be anything. It could honestly be even in any industry. It's just you have to be real, and you have to get your catch to it, and you just work your way through it and just be consistent. That's the other thing too. The most consistent people win on Instagram and on social media every day.
No, I mean, and again, one of the things that, if I can try to separate, I mean, obviously I know you, but if I was just to try and, look at what you're doing on your social media, it's energized, it's clean, and it's nothing crazy complicated. It's usually a little bit of humor in it. And like when you have that sort of simple recipe, but like you said, you're consistent with it, and then you start to see the followers. I mean, again, like you say, what is it, in like literally 7 months, 314,000.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've been an adopter of social media, and what I've sort of learned so much from you is on the Instagram side, because like on the Facebook and the LinkedIn side,
Yeah.
I've got that stuff down.
Yeah, you do.
My Instagram game is terrible, which I know we're working on, you and me, off camera on this. But
Yeah.
it's like, you are right about that consistency, and then but also the importance of you said it, you're a brand. So I just want to go back a little bit, because something that I've always talked about is that coaches have to realize you're our brand. You need to be a marketing machine.
Yeah.
Right? A saying that I have is with my pros is, our staff at Blue Chip, is if people outside the four walls of the club don't know who you are, you really have no value to grow yourself and the business.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article years ago about the power of 5,000 business cards. I kind of said, if you gave out 5,000 business cards a year to new people, just to let them know that, hey, your name's Tim, you're a tennis coach, how to get hold of you. If every coach in the country did that, right? That same mentality where you're selling, you're promoting yourself, your brand, the game of tennis,
Yeah.
be the #1 sport in the world,
Yeah.
by a mile within a year. But the thing is that I've seen a lot of coaches that, I think they get too caught up in their teaching versus their promotion of what they're teaching.
Oh,
And
100%.
I know there's some pros out there who they almost feel that the club or the people should just come to them on the court. It's not their job. Having hired and trained hundreds of pros now and worked with multiple facilities of all types, you have got to have, especially in today's day and age, that brand, that presence, the personality. Because like you said, anyone can teach a forehand.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, right? There was a time when you and I didn't know how to teach a forehand, right? So someone taught us. It's what is more important, I think, right now for like today's modern coach is that presence, the personality, the way that they can engage with an audience, be it in person or on a podcast or on social media. All of those things are just air apparent in being successful in this industry. And you see it, the most successful coaches on like social media, like you said earlier, there's a presence, there's an energy, there's something that is engaging beyond them just saying, this is a semi-Western grip. That stuff, again, is readily available. One last thing, you touched on it. You said about how, some people out there trying to teach you how to use social media, but then when you go to their own social media, it's laughable. This must happen in any industry, but you've got to be, when we're talking about, like, if you're a coach and you're watching this and you're looking at like portals of education, like whether it's a conference you're attending or an online conference, or you're taking maybe a structured course that's over a period of time, you really have to, the people who are teaching it, they really have to have done it, right? And that's something that I think it's very easy for people to say, there's assumptions. I've made these assumptions before. I remember when I was, fun fact, when my first ever conference was a PTR symposium in 2007. I couldn't afford a hotel. I slept in my car, and I had homemade business cards. And at the time, I think I was earning about $11 or $12 an hour for a clinic and about $15 or so an hour for a private. Anyway, my point is that when it's very easy, I think, to start to try and learn from somebody because maybe you think that's who it is, or they have, you saw them at a conference or someone told you this. It's like anything. You got to do your homework on the people that you're learning from.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't go to a medical seminar and listen to someone talk about, the latest in brain surgery if the guy wasn't an actual brain surgeon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also going off of that, you wouldn't go to a seminar and listen to someone talking about brain surgery when there's a profile picture of just him at a bowling alley or him at I can't even. But you get what I'm saying. Like what they do is they promote these things, and you see these pictures, and you're like, wow, it doesn't look cool. Like, I think the way that people should think if you're having any of these education seminars or anything like that is you got to make it cool. Like, look at Grant Cardone's 10 times event. He has Kevin Hart come out. He has him. He has Tony Robbins. It all looks super cool. You don't want to see a Christmas card on the event preview. And it just blows my mind that, like, and it holds our industry to a lower standard, and I feel like it devalues us. And if I wish, and I hope to honestly, eventually one day, once I walk the walk, make something where tennis coaches can see this next type of life. Not necessarily just throw material things, but just see, okay, this is what you can look like. You can have a nice suit. You can drive a nice car. Instead of just some random, corny, like Christmas picture. Like, come on. Like, I'm not going to listen. Who am I going to listen to? Am I going to listen to a dude with a suit behind a nice car? Or am I going to listen to a Christmas picture person? I don't know.
It's funny you say that. Just about the suit. I remember I used to, when I was, I would often, most of my presentations at conferences were on sort of the business side.
Yeah.
I would always wear a suit. And it was people used to laugh at me. They were like, "Why is this guy? He's a tennis. Where's your tennis stuff?" But for me, it was also synonymous with what I'm trying to deliver and be more professional and raise the standards overall. And I think that's something where it is. It's very interesting right now with. It was heading this way anyway. What I'm about to say before COVID, but COVID has really now just again escalated it. Is everybody is putting a conference on, some sort of an online portal that they're rocking up left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that though is, and I do take a keen interest in them, but I'm not seeing, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of new substance. It's a lot of the same regurgitated stuff, a lot of the same voices, and so on and so forth. And something I told you off the record here, and I'll share with everyone is, I don't plan on doing any presenting this year, next year, or maybe even for a couple of years after that, because for the last 2 years, I had a number of sort of brain waves and things and opportunities, and, I put it out there, and it was out there on, live, online, social media. So I don't think there's a need for me to suddenly pop up at another conference and talk about something that's already out there, especially if people are paying for it. Something that I really tried to do was I really tried to never present on the same subject even twice. Admittedly, it happened a few times, but when I see some people in the industry and I see them on the speaker's docket and I see their title and I'm like, I must have seen this at least 20 times.
Yeah.
But the thing is what's different is I think people were already beginning to see through it, and you were seeing, in particular too, that I was familiar with and did was like the Tennis House with Devore and that group that he got out of there. I don't want to offend him, but I think last time I looked it was like 17,000 people or something in that group. It's probably a lot more now, but that was a very innovative thing that he did.
Yeah.
And you've seen, his social media and Instagram and stuff has spun off from that and, done well with it. But he had a couple of conferences a year. There were a little bit of a fresher take. He was able to definitely bring in some, I think, bigger name pros as well to talk through that social media content and reach that he had. And then the other one, obviously, is the Women's Tennis Coaches Association that I was on the board for 2 years. Again, it was new, it was innovative. They did some simple things like, the speakers were only for 25 minutes. They wouldn't have the same speaker at the same conference. Like, Sarah, the CEO, did a really good job of, look, that content's been done before. You're not speaking on it, And then also, I think the right blend of what I liked about the WTCA conferences was there was a blend of a couple of big names, right? And then a lot of new content, but also a bridge where there was a lot of content that wasn't directly in the tennis industry. So, I remember seeing stuff on marketing and branding and not from tennis players, it was, I forget the lady's name now, but, she's like a Forbes New York Times bestseller author and things of this nature. And that was exciting, and they had some good numbers out of that. But what I'm concerned a little bit about is, as like I said earlier, as the tennis is sort of been given this, adrenaline kick from COVID, are we as an industry educated enough? Are we open-minded enough to capture this gift, basically? Because I talked earlier about, say, the lack of indoor courts in this area and how, the only way that people will start building new facilities is if you have absolutely massive growth.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's purely dollars and cents, and understanding the revenue per square foot of anything. It doesn't matter if you're opening in a restaurant. It's the McDonald's effect, basically. You got to have either McDonald's effect, where it's just traffic, and it's cheap, but it's traffic.
Yeah.
Or you have to go to the other end of the thing, where, like, say, a Ruth's Chris, where it's an experience. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and they don't need to churn the tables as much.
Yeah.
So and you see examples of that in the health club industry. Planet Fitness, obviously, at $9.99 a month is specifically that price point because people won't cancel because it's $10. There's been studies done that anything below $10, people won't cancel it even if they're not using it. This was one of the big not mistakes, but concerns I know shareholders had with Netflix when they increased their price beyond the $9.99 to $14.99. And would people start to cancel and so on and so forth? But what happens is again, back in the gym space, you've got the Equinoxes of the world that are $150, $160, up to $200, depending on where you are. Or you've got the Planet Fitness. They're both gyms, they're both facilities, but one model is based on a high cost, excellent experience, and the other one is based on low cost, very minimal experience. So things like this is in the tennis industry, and as we see more and more players now have come out the woodwork or tried it for the first time, where are you in your business? Like you made a point about how when you started, you were charging, just $20. Now, again, if you're, say, in a certain part of the country and you have all these new players and you're trying to build the volume up, is it wrong to do that? No, of course not. But the problem is in our industry is that there's not really any clear guidelines on things like pricing and really just the business as a whole.
Yeah.
So, at Blue Chip, we're lucky because, I think we recognize and we try to, do our research and work through these things. And also, like I said, we're very big on learning from other industries. But back in May when, March through May when we had our shutdown here, about 70% of our business got shut down. And there were some concerns, but then as I've seen this just come out of it, but it's also interesting. It changes, like in our area, like the barrier to the way that you would sort of see success in what we were doing was how many indoor courts do you manage? How many do you own, right? And that model has been completely flipped on its head because of COVID. Moving back towards the outdoor space and trying to, like I said, space heaters on the courts. It's nothing revolutionary, but were people doing that? Are people doing it?
I think 100%. I think that model should, again, I've never ran a club before yet, or owned an indoor club, but I think it should be how engaged are your clients monetarily. And that could be through Instagram, that could be through training programs that the club's putting out, that could be indoor court time, that could be through a fitness thing that you bring. And that's the thing that I think, I wish and I hope that every single person, with all respect, every single person realizes that if there is another shutdown, can you make money and can you stay afloat, or can you not sacrifice as much revenue as you would as if there wasn't? And what I mean by that is, like, for example, like for me, if courts got shut down today, I could still make at least 50% of what I do. And that's through sending out newsletters, trying to sell products. That's through sponsorships. That's through different training videos. And I think clubs and people should learn that. And like even going more from that, people got laid off from their jobs from COVID, right? You worked for a club, you had a great job, and boom, you lose your job. Okay, well this time, if you lost your job and you had an Instagram brand or a social media following, it doesn't matter. Like you can use your social media and your brand to create your own job security. And I hope everyone learns from that.
Yeah. Again, and this is where, I think what's kind of unique about the conversations we're going to have is, there's a big age gap, man. And I think there's a lot of people in the industry that wouldn't necessarily think us two are going to have a podcast together. But the whole point is, and I don't mind saying this here, like, yeah, like you just getting started in your career, dude, but I love your energy and want to learn from your perspective, right? Something that's really important to me and a whole part of our Blue Chip culture is, Blue Chip is my baby. I created it, I love it, but I have other partners in the company now, and even the way that I'm segueing into a bucket list here, and and teaching, coaching collegiately,
Yeah.
it's because I believe in the people that work, that are owners in Blue Chip and our staff. And I have this saying, I want to empower them to be more brilliant than I could ever have been. You know, that to me is such a, firstly, it just makes it for a great place to work, right? But it's a similar thing to you. Like, you know, I think, you would say, that there's stuff that you've learned from me and my experience.
100%.
But my point with you is, I want to see you do stuff that I couldn't even fathom, because that's ultimately, I think, how good businesses operate, right? It's our industry has I have this, another saying of mine is, we have an industry in the tennis world of inheritance rather than innovation. And, a lot of like, oh, that's just because it's the way it's always been done and we're just going to keep on doing it. And you see that all through the industry. And, one thing that I remember I used to say at the end of a talk would be to the audience that every single one of you, especially like the younger ones, I was like, if you have the same people educating in the industry and you have the same few people just doing it again and again, it really just becomes very stale. And, there are so many ways now where you can get your voice out there.
Yeah.
But, I was down at Methodist University with their PTM program back in, when was it? November. And, you've got this great crop of young, talented, soon-to-be industry professionals. And I said to every one of them, I said, you should be, I pulled up, I think it was the, I forget, one of the tennis magazines. And I said, why aren't you all submitting articles to this? Why aren't you creating blogs and sharing, your perception and what you've learned and what you can either help someone else with or look to get help for? There's not enough of that. I think a lot of people think that maybe what they have to say is not valid, which I think is ridiculous, because as an industry, we're not innovative enough. So anyone that has even a half decent idea,
Yeah.
I urge you to share it and communicate that. But then also it takes more people like, that top-down mentality that we have. Instead, more people that are willing to listen and to learn and to change and to, grow that way. So
I agree.
yeah, I mean, it's something that's, look, I mean, I'm true to my word on that. I think that, we've got, a Blue Chip, got a very young staff, and, the guys and girls, I learn from them every day. This stuff, it can't just be the Tim Bainton show. So.
Well, it's the tennis podcast
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Tim Bainton.
That's right. But,
Cool.
I know, so listen, I know we're going to wrap this up here, but one thing is, we hope, those listening like it, and
Yeah.
we're gonna try and drop something new every Monday.
Totally.
Maybe about sort of 20, 30 minutes, and look forward to feedback and comments and all of that good stuff. And I'm sure as we go down the line, the joke I said with Tyler the other day was, if this goes well, we'll eventually have our own studio and makeup artists and stuff.
Oh yeah, totally.
So we'll see how, if we look back in a year's time, we'll look at episode 1 and hopefully, well, maybe I'll pressure me to get in some better shape and drop a few pounds. So
Sounds good. Awesome. Cool. So.